Imagine for a second that you are holding the ultimate tactical advantage over an enemy who just moments ago tried to completely destroy you.
Right.
Or just picture having a sworn, bitter opponent completely at your mercy. I mean, the biological hardwired response there is to press your advantage, right? To crush them, to win at all costs.
Yeah, that's just basic human instinct.
Exactly. But what if you chose a path that completely defied all conventional logic of conflict? Today, we are diving into a profound intersection between the brutal, unforgiving realities of war and, well, the absolute purity of human intention.
And we've got a fantastic stack of sources for this deep dive today. We are pulling from historical texts, excerpts from the Najm al-Balagha, various biographical accounts, and even a really famous story passed down by the poet Rumi.
It's an incredible mix of material, and our mission today is to look at two astonishing moments from the life of Imam Ali, a foundational figure in Islam that just completely upend how we typically think about power and retaliation.
It really does challenge everything we assume about human nature in extreme situations. We typically view victory as this purely objective outcome. Like you either win or you lose based on who controls the field.
Right, it's a binary.
Exactly. But the material we are unpacking today introduces this radical idea. The idea that the mechanics of winning are entirely secondary to the moral dimensions of how you actually win.
Which is such a tough concept to grasp when the stakes are life and death. And to figure out how someone achieves that superhuman level of self-mastery, we need to understand the environment.
These texts aren't presenting abstract philosophical debates happening in a quiet room somewhere.
No, not at all. These are decisions being made in the dirt and blood of the 7th century. The historical accounts position Imam Ali as a leader who basically viewed the external battlefield as a direct reflection of the internal state of the soul.
So let's ground this in the first major event from our sources. Picture yourself transported to the arid plains of the Middle East in the 7th century, specifically at the Battle of Siffin, which was a massive, incredibly significant civil conflict.
Huge. On one side, you have Imam Ali and his army, and on the other side, the forces of Muawiyah, the governor of Syria, who is staging this massive rebellion. And the setup here is just a masterclass in ruthless military strategy.
Yeah, because Muawiyah's forces actually arrive at the battlefield first.
Right. And we are talking about a sprawling force of more than 40,000 men.
Which is just a staggering number for that era. And their early arrival, it dictates the entire initial dynamic of the battle.
Yeah.
Because they get there first, they immediately seize control of the banks of the Euphrates River and all the surrounding water wells.
Which is everything in that landscape.
Literally everything. I mean, in a harsh, unforgiving desert environment, controlling the water supply isn't just about resource management. It is the ultimate strategic high ground. Water is the single determining factor of life and death for tens of thousands of men and their cavalry.
And Muawiyah weaponizes that geography immediately, right? The accounts detail how he stations those 40,000 troops along the riverbanks with explicit orders to refuse Imam Ali's army any access to the water whatsoever.
Right. None. The goal isn't to fight them. The goal is to break them.
It's a biological siege.
Yeah, exactly. You aren't defeating the enemy with superior combat tactics. You are cutting off their lifeline and forcing their own biology to turn against them.
I mean, if you want a modern analogy, it's the equivalent of a military targeting a city's power grid and water treatment facilities during a massive heat wave.
That's a great comparison. The mechanism is designed to force a surrender through the sheer agonizing reality of dehydration. And the psychology behind that tactic is what makes it so devastating,
Because it's so hopeless.
Right. It strips away any concept of honorable warfare and just reduces the opposing army to a state of desperate survival. When you deny an army water, you aren't just weakening them physically. You're attempting to break their spirit, induce panic, and really trigger mutiny within their own ranks.
So Imam Ali's army arrives, and they are suddenly facing this agonizing death. But they don't surrender or mutiny. The sources describe this highly coordinated, desperate counterattack.
Yeah, they do.
But how exactly does an army dying of thirst manage to break a heavily guarded blockade held by 40,000 rested men? I mean, logistically, how does that work?
Well, it comes down to a massive concentration of force driven by absolute desperation. Because a huge army of 40,000, they have to spread out to guard miles and miles of riverbank.
Ah, right. They can't stack everyone in one spot.
Exactly. So Imam Ali dispatches this specialized, highly motivated force of about 4,000 cavalry and infantry units. And instead of engaging the entire Syrian line, they hit one specific point of the blockade with everything they have.
You just have to imagine the ferocity there.
Oh, it would be terrifying. I mean, these are men fighting for the literal ability to take their next breath. So they strike the Syrian guards violently, they break the line, and they successfully secure control of the watering place.
Okay, so boom. Now the entire narrative flips. The blockade is broken and the power dynamic shifts instantly. Ali's army now holds the ultimate tactical advantage. They control the Euphrates.
They do.
And naturally, the first thing these thirsty, exhausted soldiers demand is retaliation.
Of course they do.
I mean, they've just watched their comrades suffer, their horses are near collapse, and they want to inflict that exact same pain on the Syrian army. They want to cut off Muawiyah's forces and let them die of thirst.
And that demand for retaliation is, honestly, the most predictable human response possible. It's the instinct for reciprocal justice. The Syrian army established the rules of engagement by weaponizing the water in the first place.
They set the precedent.
Exactly. So the logical next step in any standard military playbook, ancient or modern, really, is to use the enemy's own tactics against them. It is asymmetrical warfare right up until the moment you gain the upper hand, at which point it just becomes a simple equation of leverage.
But Imam Ali rejects that equation entirely.
He does, completely.
The sources provide his exact response to his men's demands, and it is just a complete subversion of tactical logic. He tells his soldiers, and the texts are very explicit here, says, "Do you want to take the same brutal step which these Syrians had taken, never prevent anyone from water?"
It's such a powerful moment.
And he doesn't just hold his own men back, right? He sends a message directly across the battlefield to Muawiyah's army. He states, "We will not reciprocate your actions. Come have the water as we are equal in need of it."
He essentially just dismantles the entire concept of leverage. He invites the very men who just tried to kill his army through dehydration to come and drink freely from the river his men just bled to secure.
Okay, let me push back on this a bit, because from a purely strategic standpoint, this sounds disastrous.
Yeah, it's crazy, right?
It does. In a life-or-death struggle, where thousands of lives are on the line, willingly giving up your greatest tactical advantage just seems, well, it seems almost negligent. You are literally refreshing the enemy's horses and hydrating the soldiers who are going to try and slaughter your men the very next day.
Yeah.
Why risk your own troops' lives just to take the moral high ground? Like, how does he justify that?
That tension you're pointing out is exactly what makes these accounts so profound. To understand the why, we have to look at the foundational philosophy driving Imam Ali. In his framework, the means completely define the end. There is no separation between the two.
Okay, so the method is the message.
Precisely. Winning a battle through cruelty, oppression, or barbaric tactics, like weaponizing water, that actually corrupts the victory itself.
So if he adopts the tyrant's methods to defeat the tyrant, he essentially becomes what he's fighting against.
Exactly that. If your intention is to establish justice, you cannot use injustice as your primary tool. To Ali, morality cannot be suspended simply because the environment has become hostile.
Which is what we all do, right? The environment is toxic, so we get toxic.
Right, but he refuses to allow the enemy's toxic behavior to dictate his own ethical standards. By offering the water, he demonstrates this absolute sincerity to his principles, proving that his actions are governed by a higher moral order, not by the shifting tides of battlefield leverage.
Man, that requires a stunning level of conviction. I mean, we see people abandon their morals over a minor disagreement at the office, let alone in the middle of a brutal war.
Oh, for sure.
But yielding a tactical advantage on a macro scale is one thing, you know? You're dealing with vast armies and grand strategy. What happens when that philosophy is tested on a purely intimate level, where your own life is seconds away from ending?
Well, the sources actually anticipate that exact question, which brings us to the second story, famously highlighted by the poet Rumi. It moves us from the grand scale of Siffin to the incredibly visceral reality of single combat.
So zooming way in.
Exactly. In this account, Imam Ali is engaged in a fierce one-on-one duel with a non-Muslim enemy warrior.
And the physical exertion of armored combat in a desert climate must have been just unimaginable.
It was grueling, exhausting work. But eventually, Ali overpowers his opponent. He disarms the man, forces him to the ground, and sits on his chest.
So he's got him pinned.
Right. Ali's sword is drawn. The combat is effectively over, and Ali is mere seconds away from delivering the fatal blow.
Yeah.
The enemy is completely at his mercy.
And in that final moment, knowing he is about to die, the defeated enemy does something designed to inflict maximum psychological damage.
Yeah, he does.
He looks up and he spits directly into Imam Ali's face.
It is just a profound act of defiance and contempt.
Let's analyze the biology of that moment, because I think it's critical to understanding what happens next.
Oh, absolutely.
A physical insult like that instantly hijacks the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for logic and restraint. When you are already in a state of hyperarousal, pumped full of adrenaline from fighting for your literal life, being spat on triggers an explosive emotional response.
You get that red mist.
Exactly. It turns a strategic combatant into a reactive animal. The enemy was intentionally trying to drag Ali out of a state of righteous warfare and into a petty, ego-driven street fight.
And in that split second, the entire context of the duel changes. The enemy isn't fighting for survival anymore. He's fighting to humiliate.
So how do the sources say Ali reacted to that psychological hijacking? Because every human instinct screams to just bring the sword down and end it right there.
His reaction defies all biological instinct. Ali he pauses.
He just stops.
He completely stops. He physically removes himself from the man's chest. He sheathes his sword entirely, and he simply walks away, leaving the enemy soldier lying in the dirt, completely bewildered.
The cognitive dissonance for that enemy must have been staggering. You insult a warrior who has a sword to your throat, fully expecting an immediate execution, and instead, he packs up and leaves.
Yeah, it makes no sense too.
Why spare someone who just violated your dignity in the most visceral way possible?
Well, when the shocked enemy actually asks him that very question, Ali's explanation provides the core thesis of this entire deep dive. Ali explains that during the combat, his intention was entirely pure. He was fighting for God, acting as an instrument of justice for a higher cause.
Right.
The combat had absolutely nothing to do with personal animosity or hatred for the man himself.
But the spit changed the chemistry of the fight.
Exactly. Ali explains that the moment the man spat in his face, his ego was triggered. He became personally angry. The purity of his intention was suddenly contaminated by this desire for personal vengeance.
Wow.
And he knew that if he had brought the sword down right at that second, it would no longer have been an act of justice for a higher cause. It would have been an act of anger driven by his own ego. And because his sincerity was compromised, he absolutely refused to strike.
That is, he would rather let a deadly combatant go free than strike a single blow tainted by his own pride. It fundamentally redefines the concept of strength. We usually assume that if an action is legally or strategically justified, like killing an enemy combatant in a literal war, then your internal emotional state doesn't really matter.
Right, the outcome is what matters.
Exactly. But for Ali, the internal intention is the only thing that matters.
And that emphasis on absolute sincerity for a higher power is the defining feature of his leadership. And the aftermath of the duel illustrates the sheer impact of that sincerity.
What happens with the enemy soldier?
Well, according to the text, the soldier was so profoundly moved by this superhuman display of self-mastery, realizing he was facing a man completely submitted to a higher moral order rather than his own petty ego, that he actually embraced Islam on the spot.
That is incredible. And when you lay these two events side by side, an army of 4,000 securing water only to share it with their executioners, and a warrior sheathing his sword mid-strike to protect the purity of his soul, a very clear pattern emerges.
It does.
The external circumstances vary wildly, but the internal framework remains completely immovable.
And the sources introduce a specific concept here that really bridges these historical events to human psychology. They describe the true battlefield as the one within the human psyche. The texts refer to a struggle against what is called al-nafs al-amara.
Okay, let's break that down for the listener. What does that term translate to in practice?
It translates roughly to the commanding self. It's basically the part of the human ego that demands immediate satisfaction. It seeks revenge, it thrives on pride, and it operates entirely on base reactive instincts.
The part of us that wants to snap back.
Exactly. In Ali's philosophy, a leader who cannot subdue their own commanding self has absolutely no business trying to subdue an external opponent. True power is the ability to conquer your own spite.
Think about how that translates to your life right now. We aren't leading cavalry charges across the Euphrates, obviously, but we are navigating conflicts every single day.
All the time.
How often do you justify a vengeful act, a sharp email, or a petty remark simply by saying, well, they started it?
It is the universal justification for lowering our own standards.
It really is.
Yeah.
We use the other person's toxicity as a permission slip. Like, a coworker throws you under the bus during a project update, so you conveniently forget to CC them on an important email.
Oh yeah, the classic office warfare.
Right. Or a partner snaps at you, so you target their deepest insecurity in response. We tell ourselves that because the other person played dirty first, the rules of basic decency just no longer apply to us.
We feel justified.
We do. We become the army weaponizing the water, and we justify it by claiming it's just the reality of the environment.
But Ali's standard completely strips away that excuse. It forces a rigorous self-examination. It demands that your actions remain anchored to your internal values, regardless of the external provocations.
Which is so hard to do.
It's incredibly hard. But if your response is tainted by ego, spite, or a desire to inflict emotional pain, the action is fundamentally corrupt, even if you can logically justify being in the right.
It's the ultimate test of intention. It forces you to ask, am I engaging in this conflict to resolve a problem, or am I engaging because I want the other person to feel as small and humiliated as they made me feel?
And if the motivation is rooted in the latter, the framework from the sources suggests you have to sheathe your sword. You have to step back. You have to relinquish your tactical advantage if utilizing it requires compromising your own integrity.
It completely flips the script on what it means to be strong. In modern culture, strength is almost exclusively equated with dominance, the ability to crush an opponent, to win the argument, to get the last word.
Always the last word, yeah.
Always. But these historical accounts present a radical alternative. They say true strength is restraint. True strength is maintaining your humanity and your principles when every biological instinct and external pressure is begging you to abandon them.
It's a standard of absolute sincerity that views kindness to an enemy not as a tactical error, but as the ultimate manifestation of moral victory.
Today's deep dive took us from the dusty, desperate plains of Siffin to the intimate intensity of single combat. We watched an army fight through a blockade to secure water, only to freely offer it to the enemies who had weaponized their thirst.
Wow, amazing.
And we analyzed the psychological friction of a warrior halting a fatal strike to prevent his own ego from corrupting his intention.
Both instances demand a mastery over the self that really challenges us to elevate how we handle conflict in our own lives.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final, profound thought from our sources to turn over in your mind. It's a quote that perfectly synthesizes everything we've explored today.
It's a great quote.
In a famous directive, Imam Ali wrote to his governor, Malik al-Ashtar, outlining how a leader should view the people they govern. He provided this astonishing instruction. He wrote, "Infuse your heart with mercy for the subjects, for they are of two types, either your brother in religion or your like in creation."
Your like in creation. It completely dissolves the artificial boundaries we build between ourselves and our opponents.
It really does. So the next time you find yourself holding a tactical advantage in a conflict, whether you are dealing with a bitter rival at work, a stranger provoking you on the internet, or someone who has actively tried to harm you, I want you to pause.
Just sheathe the sword for a second.
Exactly. Think about the person cutting off your water or the person spitting in your face. What happens to your response when you force yourself to see them not as an obstacle to be crushed, but as your, in creation?
That changes everything.
It really does. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the default narratives, keep exploring the vast complexities of human nature, and we will see you next time.
If you like this content, please like, comment and share. Tell us what topic you want to see next. And don't forget to subscribe.